Welcome to Night Dreams Talk Radio, where we cover the latest news on UAPs, aliens, Bigfoot, Sasquatch, and the great mysteries of the unknown. Hosted by Gary Anderson, this show goes deep into the paranormal, asking all the questions we all want answers to. With expert guests and real stories, Gary uncovers the truth behind the unexplained. Be sure to listen and subscribe to join over 148,000 subscribers tuning in nightly for the most intriguing paranormal talk.
Join Night Dreams Talk Radio and support the show for just 99 cents a month. Unlock exclusive content and help us dive deeper into the paranormal mysteries you love.
Who's friends with all the night dreamers talking to you at night? Gary on the radio, but maybe he's not in sight. Bigfoot's on his tail, flying UFOs, that's right. Gary's Talk Show Radio, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday nights. If you need a friend to talk to, he will always be there. The Night Dreamers Talk Show will fix your despair. If you want to talk conspiracies, Night Dreamers is for you. Top secret case, alien space, it's Gary with the news. Tune in on the radio, don't let Big Brother know. They're listening to everything, even Gary's late night show. If you need a friend to talk to, he will always be there. The Night Show Dreamers Talk Show will fix your despair, because Gary's talking to you at night.
The Strange News in brief. I'm Guy Ticker. Strange phenomenon, perhaps, is genuine. The strange phenomenon where two or more people share the exact same dream is perhaps real. We've all had dreams that stick in our minds even after waking, but have you ever had the rare experience of sharing the same dream with someone? It appears more common than you think. I'm Guy Ticker. The Strange News is brought to you by Night Dreams Talk Radio Network. Do you have a strange story? Contact us at nightdreamstalkradio.com. Get ready for Night Dreams Talk Radio with the legendary Gary Anderson, where we're reigniting the spirit of classic talk radio from the 80s and 90s. As one of the fastest growing alternative talk shows, Gary dives into the mysteries of UAPs, UFOs, and the enigmatic Bigfoot, along with Earth changes and more. Don't be surprised if you tune in one day to hear a famous movie star or singer share their own paranormal experiences. Gary brings you the top guests, captivating stories, and unforgettable bumper music that'll take you back in time. So, buckle up and let your dreams take flight. An extraordinary journey awaits.
Well, it is Friday. Tonight we got a great show. We're going to be talking with Lou Elizondo about disclosure and all that here in a minute or two. JC, do you ever buy those pre-made salad mixes, with all the vegetables in a bag?
Once in a great while I do. Something I should know about?
I don't know, but you better really check it out before you start putting them in a bowl. Well, a couple out of California went and bought a bunch of bags of them because they were having a dinner party. And the cook sat there and made these fantastic salads, right?
Yeah.
Including with the greatest tasting salad dressing. And the guests were at the table and they were putting their forks in it. And one of the guests first noticed that, their lettuce was moving. Well, it turned out it was a bizarre salad, I'll tell you that, because you know what they had in it?
What?
Lizards.
Oh, that would freak somebody out, I'll tell you. You would think twice about buying something in a bag again.
Well, I never thought about that.
Yeah,
I guess that's a fresh bag of salad mix, isn't it?
That's about as fresh as you can get. I guess you're competing with the lizards. Jeez.
I don't know. Lizard tasting good, I guess. We always talk about bears on the show, don't we?
Oh, yes, we do.
Well, now it's California. It's not Florida. You notice that? Well, a couple moves into a new house. They're in the house and they notice some weird noises coming from underneath.
Uh-oh.
So the husband gets really, he wants to discover where this noise is coming from. So he crawls underneath in the crawl space. And there was a giant bear hibernating.
Wow. Yeah, how do you wake that up?
You don't wake it up, and you better have some type of big gun with you, too, at least a 30-06.
Wow, can you imagine that thing waking up and startling it, and it's being hungry on top of that? Oh, boy.
Well, good thing he didn't have a garage full of beer, that the bear would be there.
Yeah, bears seem to like breaking houses and drink people's beer.
I don't know what it is, but bears love beer.
They do. And there's a lot. Listen, how many stories have we come across over the news that it was beers and bear?
Yeah.
Bear.
Well, breaking in people's houses, going in the garages, tearing the guy's, stash of beer in his freezer, refrigerator, cans of beer, broken bottles of beer, just become bears.
Yeah, I know. It's bizarre, but it's not a one of. That's what's even more bizarre about the stories.
Have you ever had a bear roast?
No, I never. I have ate some bear meat.
Oh, I know. I'm talking about you're at the table bare naked and eating roast.
Oh, definitely not that one either. That reminds me of the time I went to the fair as a kid and had a big thing and a guy out there barking, "Come see the 6-foot man eating chicken." You go in there and there's a 6-foot tall guy eating chicken. I was like, oh, all that for $1.
Oh, I know. Well, let's get down to our show tonight. We're going to be talking about disclosure. So let's find out a little information about our guests, okay?
Yes, do.
Okay.
Luis Lou Elizondo is the former head of the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, AATIP, the Pentagon unit that researched UFOs, now known as Unidentified Anomalous Phenomena, UAP. Prior to AATIP, Elizondo oversaw counterespionage and counterterrorism investigations worldwide for the Department of Defense. And he also worked for the Office of the National Counterintelligence Executive and the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. Elizondo is a proud Army veteran and later served his country throughout the world, including South Korea, Latin America, the Caribbean, Afghanistan, and other countries throughout the Middle East. Luis Elizondo is a graduate of the University of Miami, where he studied microbiology and immunology.
Well, Lou, welcome to the show. And the first thing I want to say, thank you to the service of our country.
Well, Gary, first of all, thank you so very much for your service. And thank you for your time this evening. I got to tell you, I suffer a little bit from imposter syndrome when talking to a veteran such as yourself. We had a chance to very briefly speak earlier. And I got to tell you, your generation, you guys had a hell of a lot worse than we did. We served our country. We came back to ticker tape parades, and we came back to discounts at movie theaters. But that wasn't the case for you guys, was it? You guys had to suffer like hell over there, and then come back and then have to suffer the indignity by some of your own countrymen. So let me afford you just a brief moment. My sincere appreciation for your sacrifices, the sacrifices of your comrades, and somehow keeping it together, right?
Oh,
a lot of people
that
have had to endure what you folks did, didn't turn out so well. They allowed themselves to get soured and jaded. And somehow you and some other folks that I've had the privilege and honor to know as well from your generation somehow kept it together and moved forward and continue to serve your country and continue to engage America and make a difference. So my hat's off to you. Thank you very much, Gary, for having me on. It is truly, truly my sincere honor and privilege to be here and with your audience here today.
Well, glad to have you. One of the questions I'm going to ask you, and I'd interview a little bit probably different than you've been interviewed, but when you were young, before you were in the military, when you were like a teenager or younger, did you ever have any UFO experiences, or were you into UFO, the B movies, which was very famous at our age when we were younger?
I did not. I think the only only B movie I probably saw was coming home from maybe fourth grade, fifth grade, and this is before my parents had a divorce and things got really bad. So this is when times were actually pretty good. And so I had a little TV in my room, and I watched while I was doing homework a rerun of the famous The Blob movie, if you remember that.
Oh, yeah.
And that's about as close to science fiction I ever got. Unfortunately, I was too young to be in a movie theater and have a nice date with me and have an ice cream or a fountain soda afterwards or before. But that's about as close as I ever got to the UFO topic, which, as you know, you can tell is not really close at all. It's science fiction, but has nothing to do with UFOs, really.
Oh, it doesn't. But I really have set up people for the years. Because like I mentioned before we went on the air, you got two groups of people out there in ufology, and some of them are convinced that, like these old B movies, like the giant brain or all these ETs attacking Earth. That's what ETs are like. But then you got the other group too. Well, hey, if there was ever a nuclear war, they would never allow it to happen. But something is going on. And, again, I've read hundreds of books on ufology through the years, and I'm still as confused today as I was back 10 years or 50 some years ago.
Right. Well, the reason I think, Gary, and forgive me for injecting this, but I don't think it's a UAP or a UFO issue. I think it's a people issue. Human beings and the way we deduce and if you will, construe information is limited by our own abilities to perceive and to conjugate and to rationalize. And so a lot of it is kind of a human condition. It's not really a UFO or UAP issue. It's really how human beings interpret data. And you can look at common things in life every day. Look at our nation's politics right now, not one side or the other, but this is a very bifurcated time in our nation's history where politically we're very polarized, and you can have the exact same topic, for example, whether it's Israel and Hamas or Ukraine and Russia, and people in this nation will have complete opposite perspectives, even though they're all presented the same data and the same information. Is that a data issue? No, I think it's a human issue. I think we are, as human beings, we are prone to bias. I think we are prone to having pre-constructed narratives. In the absence of information, we have a remarkable ability to create our own narrative in the void of information. And I think very much in the same nature here, in the same vein, when we talk about UAPs or UFOs in the vernacular, because there's been such a shroud surrounding this topic and the information about it, that people have had to rely on their own means of collecting information and have deduced their own opinions. So it's not really surprising, is it, that people have complete opposite perspectives on this topic, where some people say we have no idea what this is, other people say we know everything about this, and other folks are still in the middle, while there are still individuals out there that have never even considered the reality that this is real. Now, for the record, let me say, Gary, that I'm not a ufologist. I've never been a ufologist. I've never followed ufologists per se. Last I checked, there wasn't really a degree in college that certified you in ufology per se. So, I think this is kind of the beginning, the frontiers of this discussion. I think it's been going on obviously for decades. But I think we're finally at the precipice, Gary, where we can have a conversation honestly about this topic without the giggle factor, right? Without the notion of tinfoil hats and Elvis on the mothership and all these other crazy ideas that the media and ourselves, frankly, have imposed on this topic. Now that the government has come out and actually acknowledged the reality that, yeah, this is a valid topic to discuss, you've got the scientific community, the academic communities now, and even other countries now coming on board to have a conversation about UAPs. And so it's really no wonder to me why people are really struggling trying to find a good source of information, because at the end of the day, even the government our government hasn't been very forthcoming in giving people some of that information resolution, if you will, that they're looking for.
Well, let's go back even to the 50s, early 50s. Supposedly, there was a flyby of something we don't know going over the White House. And, that made the news for days and days and weeks. And that happened not just once, but for a period of days.
It did, Gary. You're absolutely right. In fact, I went over right over the Capitol building, and I actually had the I guess call it blind luck about maybe a month and a half ago of running into a gentleman, an elderly gentleman who lived in Washington, D.C. for decades and decades. And he's probably one of the last surviving individuals that actually remembers that event and witnessed it. It was totally by chance, serendipity. I went to a particular location in D.C. to meet some people, and it turns out that the caretaker of this facility was an older gentleman, about 84 years old, and he said, look, I saw it with my own eyes with my father. I was sitting in the front porch of our house there in Washington, D.C., and he gave me the exact location. He said, look, we saw these things flying over, and I looked at my father, and I said, what's that? And he said, son, I couldn't tell you what that is. So yeah, I mean, the event was real. The event actually happened. It was recorded and reported by the media extensively. There are some reports that the Air Force had actually scrambled a couple fighter jets to intercept these objects, and one may have actually engaged in some sort of event where they attempted to shoot one down. The details are still a little bit fuzzy, but it is possible that some of the material was actually fell off the craft and was collected somewhere in the Washington, D.C. area. I don't want to go into a lot of details. I don't want to get people into, some sort of corner where now all of a sudden they start thinking there's some sort of conspiracy going on. But that is one of the reports that the U.S. government, the Air Force in particular, scrambled some fighter jets to try to intercept these things and may have actually made contact with one of them.
And, again, it tells us that we are being visited. And, when I talk to, some ufologists, they go, that doesn't count. That happened many years ago. Or Roswell, if that actually happened in 1947, well, that wasn't disclosure. That happened.
So it doesn't count, right?
That doesn't count.
I guess the Renaissance doesn't count.
No.
And I guess the discovery of penicillin doesn't count because that happened a long time ago, right?
Well, that's their mindset. And if you want disclosure, there's your first disclosure in the early 50s over Washington, D.C. and Roswell. If you really think about it, I did a lot of research on Roswell. I have my theory. Everybody has their theories. But the thing is that, they announced they had wreckage of a UFO. And within hours, it changed. And I know why. Somebody spoke their bounds and announced it to the news media. It went on AP, and it went on all the newspapers, the radio, and everything. And somebody got their butt chewed out, or more.
Yeah, I mean, look, let's face it. And Gary, I don't want to bring up any bad memories, but you're a Vietnam veteran, from my understanding, and you remember. People say, well, the government never lies. Well, I mean, you remember the days of DDT and Agent Orange, right? It's perfectly fine for you, not a problem.
Yeah, you want to see my
generation,
rash?
We dealt with the burn pits, right? Oh, there's nothing wrong there. It turns out a lot of people came down with cancer and suffered. Events like the Pentagon Papers and Iran-Contra and, the recent withdrawal from Afghanistan. The government has a long history of not being completely honest with the American people. And therein lies the problem, isn't it? Therein lies the issue, because we have right now the faith and confidence in our government by the American people and in Congress is at an all-time low. Now, back when you served in the Army, it was actually at an all-time high.
Oh, yeah.
People would never have expected that your president would ever lie to you, right? They didn't understand that legally, under the terms of covert action and Executive Order 12333 and all these other guidelines, that the government is actually allowed to lie to you and can do so without impunity. And that is a very, very sobering concept for some people to wrap their head around, because we're not used to our government lying to us. We're okay with the government lying to adversaries, but not to us. And unfortunately, that's exactly what has happened over many, many decades. Now, with that said, Gary, look, I'm a patriot just like you are. There's a lot of really good people working in our government. And so I don't want to paint with a broad stroke everybody in the government as being bad. That's not the case. In fact, most of the people in our government are patriots. They're just like you and me, and they want to do a good job, and they want to pay their mortgage and raise their kids right. It's only a small minority of individuals in our government that have, unfortunately, they have a lot of authority, and they've taken advantage of that authority for reasons that still to this day I don't completely understand. I mean, I can appreciate keeping something secret, keeping out of the hands of an adversary, but keeping in, forgive the pun, but an inalienable truth about the existence of non-human intelligence and the fact that we are not alone in the universe, I don't understand how any organization or government or institution has the right to keep that information sequestered from its citizens. I just don't see it.
I don't either, and I really think too it does more harm in the long run. Let's face it, you got, regardless a government or even an individual, if somebody is lying, it's really hard after a long period of time to change your story. So if you have the government saying that these don't exist, this doesn't happen, this never happened, to them to come clean tomorrow, for example, and say, okay, we've been lying to you for all these years, then the average person is going to wonder then, well, how about everything else you've told us?
Exactly. Right?
What's going on in the world?
Our government and governments in general only work because people have faith and confidence in those governments. And when people lose faith and confidence in a government, then you have a situation that my father had to deal with when he was in Cuba as a revolutionary in the Bay of Pigs. There comes a tipping point where people finally say, look, if this government isn't representing my best interests, then, are we even really in a democracy? There's a fine line. I'll share something with you if I can, Gary, and if I start rambling, please feel free to cut me off. But my father passed away. I just started sharing this story. My father passed away a couple of years ago on Father's Day. And my father was in the Bay of Pigs invasion. And I remember I was fortunate enough, blessed enough that I was about maybe a month or so before he passed away, I knew he was sick. Now, he was an old soldier, would never tell me that he was sick, but I could tell with my background in science and my background in medicine. I knew that the time was coming. And so I was fortunate enough to have a long drive with him down to Miami, to South Florida, from Wyoming, here where I live. So about halfway through, I probably got towards Kansas. I asked my dad a question. I said, Dad, and I feel guilty now looking back because I said it almost flippantly. I said, Dad, what do you think is the greatest threat to humankind? And he thought for a moment, and he looked at me and he said, son, corruption. And I thought to myself, well, that's an odd thing to say. I'm thinking maybe a disease, a pandemic, maybe global terrorism, corruption. And I said to my father, I said, what do you mean, like financial corruption? He said, no, son, corruption. Corruption is the act of one person giving up their moral values in exchange for something else. And whether it's moral corruption, religious corruption, financial corruption, governmental corruption, it's the same thing. And when you do that in a government, especially a democracy, you have to be very careful because you begin, when you allow corruption, you allow the exchange of your own core values for something else, you begin to chip away at the very foundation of democracy. And it's a very, very slippery slope from that point to tyranny, and you no longer have a democracy. And my father was uniquely positioned to tell me that because of his involvement in the Bay of Pigs and being a political prisoner. And so I've always I always kind of knew it in my heart, but to hear him say it so succinctly really kind of codified for me why this topic is so important, because ultimately it's about accountability and transparency. And to have accountability and transparency, you need honesty, and you need to root out the corrupt individuals. And when I say corrupt, I don't mean monetarily. I mean, well, maybe monetarily, but really what I mean is anybody who is willing to break the law, in essence, not inform Congress, not inform the president, and make the unilateral decision to conduct an operation without informing the American people and thinking that they have the best interests of the American people at heart. That's a problem, because they don't have the authority to make that decision. We have these institutions designed for a very specific reason and for a very specific purpose. And when somebody makes the unilateral decision to short circuit that process, that is a corrupt process. That is a corrupt decision. And that is why you've had 70 years plus, if not more, of secrecy about this topic, because someone is making and has made the decision that the American people can't handle the truth. And between Gary, you and me and your audience, I think America can handle the truth. I think we deserve the truth. And I think the time has come now where we need to speak the truth.
Well, we do need. Now, what the people need to know is if these are a threat to national security, not just to national security, but a threat to humanity. And that's what the government needs to tell. They could put people, assure people that maybe it is not a threat to humanity. But you got two groups of people there, too. You got the people, oh, they give off orbs, they love us, they would never hurt us. And then you got the other ones saying, hey, let's give them barbecue sauce when they come and invade the earth. Or the false flag effect. That's what we're dealing with right now. Now, Lou, we need to take a break. We'll be back in about 3 minutes, and then we'll continue on, because I want to ask you some questions like, well, what's going to happen in the next 5 years, 10 years with UAPs? I'll
give you and your audience and myself a quick bathroom break, and I'll see you in 3 minutes.
Okay, my friend. We'll be right back. So we'll be right back. You're listening to Night Dreams Talk Radio. Check out our website at www.nightdreamstalkradio.com. When we come back at the top of the hour after Lou is off, we got Tim Swartz. We're going to be talking about ETs. Are they bad? Are they good? Remember the invasion of the body snatchers? They made 2 versions of that movie. Could that be going on? Well, I don't know, but we'll find that out. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Time slips. A haunted office building on a haunted street. A haunted coal town. Mysterious black cats. Unexplained light anomalies. UFOs, UAPs in the air and on the ground. Bridges in liminal spaces. Cryptids, shamans, and a werewolf. Disclosure. You don't need a ranch in Utah All this and more happens in rural southwestern Pennsylvania. Coming soon from Haunted Hills and Hollows 1 and 2 author Kevin Paul, Politics and the Paranormal in Greene County, Pennsylvania. Available this fall on Amazon and at other fine booksellers. You are listening to Night Dreams Talk Radio Network, the home of Night Dreams Talk Radio, with Gary Anderson, syndicated worldwide. Paranormal Talk Radio, like you remember.
And we're back with Lou Elizondo. Again, there's talk, it was supposed to be, I guess, from 2018, maybe I'm wrong on the year, that something is going to happen regarding UAPs within a 10-year time frame from that. Do you know anything about that?
Well, Gary, I I know a lot of rumors, but I prefer to trade in facts. The reality is that there's a lot that has happened. If you look at from 2017 to now, and there's probably people in your audience that would probably disagree with me, but I would submit to you that we have probably come further in disclosure in the last 7 years than we have in the last 70 years. When you take into account that you've had statements now by a former director of national intelligence, Ratcliffe, a former director of the CIA, Brennan, and comments by also a former director of the national intelligence, Jim Clapper, and a former president of the United States, and multiple members of Congress about the reality of this topic, I would submit to you that we're probably already well on our way in the disclosure process. I've often told people that disclosure is not an event. It's a process. And I think we're well underway in that process. And I think a lot is happening. So to say, 2018 plus or minus, as someone said in 10 years is going to be a big event, I think we've already had a lot of big events. Now, with that said, I also think we're going to have a whole lot more big events. Some of the stuff I'm happy to share with you and your audience. Other stuff I still have to keep a little bit under wraps because it's very sensitive, and we're kind of in a critical stage of coordination. But I don't think, I guess to put this succinctly, I don't think we can put the cat back in the bag at this point. You have enough people on the inside, enough whistleblowers out that are willing to come out and go public about the reality of this topic, that the government is finding itself in a situation where, kind of as you alluded to before the break, that it's going to have to figure out a way to work its way out of a corner that it has managed to paint itself into over the last 70 years. And the question is, what does that disclosure look like? There are several advocates out there that say, look, let's go full Monty. Just tell everybody the truth about everything that you know. And then there's another faction that say, well, maybe that's not overly constructive. Maybe we should do some sort of limited disclosure to avoid what they consider being catastrophic disclosure, right? There was a time in our nation's history, there were several studies, academic studies done and paid for by the U.S. government about disclosure, and said, what would it look like in a post-disclosure world if the U.S. government was honest with the American people? And it turns out that it was kind of a grim picture. They said, listen, it sounds like a good idea, but at the end of the day, there's going to be a lot of organizations, institutions, and even perhaps the government that might be destabilized. And so we don't want to cause mass pandemonium and mass panic. So maybe it's better we just kind of keep this topic under wraps for a little while longer until we figure out what to do with it. I don't subscribe to that. I think sunlight is some of the best antiseptic out there. I believe in transparency. Now, with that said, I also understand the balance between national security and transparency. By no means would I ever advocate doing anything to compromise U.S. national security. So what do I mean by that? If there was a technology, let's say, that hypothetically we had been able to develop and produce based upon insights gained from a UAP, naturally I wouldn't want Russia or China or any other adversary having access to that technology. You can call me a capitalist and call me whatever you want, but there's some countries out there that, frankly, I just don't trust with that type of technology. However, with that said, I think the mere fact that humanity is not alone in the cosmos, and that we have been visited and continue to be visited, at this point, it's almost the worst kept secret. It's to the point where on a daily basis, our brave men and women in uniform and our pilots are interacting with these things. At some point, we're gonna have to tell the American people the truth, and if we don't, we risk going back to what we said before the break, where people lose complete and total a loss of all faith and confidence in our government. And that, to me, is true catastrophic disclosure. When we stop believing our elected officials and stop believing in the ideals of what our Constitution is about and our democracy, then we are in trouble. So, I don't think it's as simple as it's a binary, yes, we tell the American people the truth or we don't. I think we can tell the American people the truth while at the same time protecting our national security assets. And so that's why this process has taken 7 years. That's why it's going to take a few more years. And this is why a lot of us are working very hard and very diligently behind the scenes, because it's not as easy as just saying, here, full open kimono, here you go. Here's the truth. Because that truth can have a very significant impact on a lot of things.
And that's a scary part. There's an individual out there, a doctor, who claims that the government, he's waiting for a false flag. I mean, when you hear all these different people saying what they think and what, they feel is going on, that is causing a lot of anguish with a lot of people. I mean, I get a lot of calls from people that they're really worried about, being abducted or being the earth being vaporized or something happening.
Gary, I lost you. You dropped for a second. Please continue. People worried about being abducted, and then you dropped off.
Yeah, okay. Well, hopefully I'm still back. But people are worried what could happen. And, when you got people saying that the government at one point is going to create a false flag, I mean, it gets people more confused.
Yeah, you're right. And again, this goes back to, in an information vacuum, people will fill that vacuum with whatever they think or what they think they know. And I believe I know who you're talking about. I don't prescribe to that false flag simply because I was in the government and I was part of the UAP UFO program. I've been very honest with the American people from day one. A lot of people who initially thought maybe I wasn't who I said I was have now realized that everything I've ever said has come to fruition and has been truthful. My commitment to this country, like you, has always been to defend this country from all enemies, foreign and domestic. And I took an allegiance, I swore an allegiance to this country and this Constitution, which vis-a-vis means the American people. And like you, I've never been relieved of that duty. So I'm still very much supportive of the ideals of what it means to be an American. And that includes honesty and transparency. And it also includes accountability, meaning if we've done something wrong in the government, then we need to own up to it and we need to face the music. That's what we expect other people to do, and that's what we need to expect ourselves to do. There's a lot of people, in the absence of information, will like to demonize the government. I don't agree with that. For the most part, our government does a lot of things very, very well and is comprised of incredible human beings, men and women in uniform that are willing to put their life on the line, like you've experienced firsthand. People like you. So it's not fair to demonize the government and say that, well, they're going to go ahead and they're going to create some sort of false flag. I do think that our government wants a solution. And they want it post haste. I think they're desperate for a way out of this, and understandably so. But let's look at the context of why this was kept secret for so long, Gary, because it's easy to point fingers and say, oh, you're wrong, America, for doing this for so many years. But in reality, when we really started to take UAPs seriously, when was that? Well, it was kind of at the beginning and the height of the Cold War. Now, as you and I both know who lived through the Cold War wasn't cold at all. It was actually pretty hot. And we were fighting a lot of proxy wars, which you were part of during that time. And it was kind of a winner takes all mentality. So on one hand, you had, then Soviet Union with, by the way, live nuclear warheads pointed at America, kind of in this chess match, winner takes all of the global map. And, we were on the other side of that competition. And so it's understandable that the generals in the Pentagon says, you know what? We know these UAPs are real, but we've got this other real threat called Russia over here. And since we really can't do a damn thing about these other things that are flying around right now, we know they're interested in our military equities and our nuclear capabilities, but they haven't shown any overt hostilities. Why don't we go ahead and focus on Russia for now? We'll put this on the back burner, and then we'll get back to this when we've solved this other issue. And then you also have the other pragmatic issue from a political perspective. We go back to faith and confidence. Our government only works because the citizens of our government believe that the government has the people's best interests at heart and is also solution focused. If there's a problem, the government will always have a solution. Well, here's a topic where there really isn't a solution. In fact, we don't necessarily know where they're from. We don't really know exactly how they operate. What we do know is that they can outperform anything that we have. They can operate with complete impunity in our controlled U.S. airspace and have the ability to fly over sensitive military installations completely unchallenged. And, oh, by the way, potentially interfere with our nuclear capabilities. That we do know. So imagine having the conversation as, let's say, the head of the Pentagon, Secretary of Defense, coming out to the American people and saying, hey, look, yeah, it's true. These things are flying over our controlled airspace and they're able to interfere with our nuclear equities. We don't really know where they're from. We don't know how they work. We don't know what they want, but we'll figure it out. That's not a great conversation to have, right? Because you want your national security apparatus to be solution oriented. And when you have a problem for which there is no solution, what do? And people say, well, that's kind of nonsensical. But is it really? Let's look at a real case scenario here, Gary. And you lived through this. The U-2 spy plane that was it was contracted by the Central Intelligence Agency and built by Lockheed Martin Skunk Works. And their job was to build a plane that could fly higher and faster than anything anybody had in the entire world. And why? Because we wanted to fly manned reconnaissance missions over mainland Russia in violation of a treaty that we signed. Now, that's important. So we started flying these airplanes, and you know what? Russia did exactly what we expected. Nothing. And so we thought for a long time, well, let me clarify, for a short time, that they didn't see us, that the plane really was faster and higher than anything that anybody had ever seen before. That was until the Russians had developed an SA-2 surface-to-air missile.
Right.
And successfully shot one down and paraded the pilot, Captain Powers, in front of the entire world and showed the wreckage to the United Nations. Now, why did they do that? Well, they didn't even admit, not to the United Nations, but not even their own country, their own citizens, that there was a problem that they could not solve. It wasn't until they had a solution for the problem did they admit that there was a problem to begin with. And this is not uncommon. A lot of governments are that way.
And that's really scary, too. And I'm going to back pace a little bit. I got to talk to Ronald Reagan when he was president, because one of my dad's friends was a famous actor and a good friend of Ronald Reagan. And I remember calling him up, and I was really worried about the Soviet Union at the time, because in the newspapers, they were talking about maybe a nuclear war, like they do nowadays. And I called him up, and I had a bunch of questions, and Star Wars was the main thing at that time. And I said, well, Star Wars protect us against a nuclear war with the Soviet Union. And he kind of paused for a second. And he said, well, it might protect us against them out there. And then he corrected himself and said it's a great possibility. That's why they're trying to develop it. But it kind of told me that maybe Star Wars, when they were trying to design it, was a twofold thing.
Well, Ronald Reagan was briefed into the program. Him and George Bush Sr. were both briefed into the program. George Bush Sr. when he was the director of CIA, and Ronald Reagan was also briefed into this into the program. So it's not surprising. Reagan said famously in a speech. Now that we're talking about Reagan,
that was a week later.
He famously said, remember the famous speech that if a UFO had landed tomorrow, would we put aside our petty differences with one another and unite as a world, as a globe? So, to use a term vernacular, common vernacular, Reagan was woke to this topic. He understood what was at stake, and he wasn't the only president. There have been many presidents before him and a few after him that were also briefed into this topic.
Are UAPs a threat to national security?
Well, here's the analogy I like to use, Gary, if I may. And forgive me, don't be precise here, Gary, but may I ask where in the country you live? What area?
Washington State.
Beautiful state. Let me ask you something. I know you live probably in a beautiful neighborhood, have great neighbors. Do you or your family, do you lock the front doors before you go to bed at night?
I do.
You know what? I do too. And by the way, I would submit to you that probably most Americans do. Not that we expect anything bad to happen, but just out of an abundance, right?
But that didn't,
precaution, we do that.
But
and
Lou, when I was a child growing up in Seattle, you know what? We never locked our doors.
I know. I remember those days too, Gary. Unfortunately, those days are long gone. But I think most of us now lock our front doors, and some of us may even go the extra step and make sure that the windows are secured, and even a few that I know will go and punch in the keypad and turn on the alarm system before they go to bed. Again, do they expect anything bad? No. So let's say, Gary, one morning you wake up to have a nice hot cup of coffee or tea. You walk downstairs early in the morning, and all of a sudden you see size 12 muddy boot prints on your living room carpet in the morning that were not there the night before. Now, no one's been hurt. Nothing's out of place. Nothing's been taken. But despite you locking the front doors and securing the windows and turning on the alarm system the night before, there are now muddy boot prints in your living room that were not there the night before. My question to you is that a threat? And my response is, well, it could be if it wanted to be, so we probably should figure out how it's getting into the house. This is the same argument for UAPs. Are they a national security threat? Look, a national security threat is a very easy calculus. It's just two pieces of an equation. It's capabilities versus intent. We've seen some of the capabilities, and yet still we have no idea what the intent is. So we don't know if it's a threat. So from a national security perspective, one has to assume something could be a threat until we are sure it is not a threat.
But again, we're not the only planet that could have life. They just found another planet they were talking about on the news yesterday, only a couple light years away from Earth. Again, they're finding new planets, new galaxies and solar systems. And we don't know. Look at how human races, from the very beginning, Cain and Abel, what happened to one of the brothers? And we're looking at this planet has never been without a war. There's killings and murders nonstop all over this world constantly. Just because a civilization could be so far advanced, they could still have that trait.
Sure,
and
absolutely.
We don't know.
We can't take it for granted that they don't. A lot of people say, "Oh, well, any civilization out there that's looking at us wants to keep us from blowing ourselves up." Maybe could be something else, and I don't want to say anything here to scare anybody, but if you ask me to wear my national security hat, I could give you all sorts of possibilities, right, that are troublesome. I'll give you a perspective. My background as a former special agent running terrorism investigations. When someone comes to me and they say, "Look, I've been quote unquote abducted," to me, you've been taken away from your whatever location you're at against your will. If that's the case, that's kidnapping. That's a federal charge, right? That's not nice. And then, oh, God forbid, they decided to touch you in any way, any fashion against your will. Well, that's assault, right? So we can start racking up the charges here, the felony charges. I don't subscribe to somebody saying, well, they're here to keep us from blowing ourselves up. Well, there's zero evidence to suggest that. People say, well, they're interested in our nukes because they want to blow ourselves up. We already did that. let's not forget that in the mid 40s, we vaporized 800,000 human souls off this planet by dropping 2 bombs in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, right? Nowhere did UAPs interfere with that. In fact, nowhere did UAPs stop us from transitioning from the atomic age to the nuclear age. Nowhere did they stop us from testing countless of bombs in the Nevada desert. Nowhere did they stop the proliferation of nuclear technology from one country to now, you can count, right? North Korea, potentially Iran, India, Pakistan, half of Europe, right? They didn't interfere. They didn't interfere with Fukushima, Chernobyl, 3 Mile Island. There's very little evidence to suggest that they did anything to stop us from killing ourselves. They didn't stop COVID. They didn't stop world hunger. They're certainly not stopping the Russian-Ukraine war or the issue over in the Middle East. So I'm kind of with you, Gary. I don't know if I subscribe to that peace, love, and happiness. Now, is it possible? Sure. Maybe they have, like we have, a no interfere policy. When we go to the Serengeti Desert, we watch the lions and the hippos and the gazelle. Is it sad when the cheetahs pounce on a baby gazelle and they rip it to shreds? Yeah, it's terrible, but we don't interfere. Why? Because that's Mother Nature. Is it possible they're taking that stance? It is, but we need more information to make that conclusion.
We do. And last question here, because God, the time has gone by so fast, Lou. Do we have wreckage of crashed UFOs?
So, first of all, Gary, the reason why it's going so fast is because you're an amazing host. So let me just say that you're asking great questions. What I can say is what I've been cleared by the Pentagon to say in my book. It's in my book very clearly. The United States government is in possession of exotic materials whose origins are unknown and whose application remains a mystery. And to this day, we still cannot replicate it. So fill in the blanks. I still maintain a security clearance with the U.S. government. I have to be very cognizant of that. I cannot say anything that I've not been cleared to say. And I don't necessarily look good in an orange jumpsuit, so I'm not going to do that. But what I will say is that we are in possession of some very interesting material, for whatever that means. And by the way, I got to say before we go, you've got a gentleman in the very beginning who read off my experience. Man, I wish I would have had him read my audiobook or whoever that was, because man, they've got an incredible voice, man. I was listening him talking about me, and I was just like, oh my gosh, is he talking about me? There's no way. This guy's incredible. So my hat's off to him. Please give that person my regards.
I'll give Eric that. Do you want a copy of the bio by any chance? We can send it to you.
Of Eric?
Yes, reading your bio. Yes,
I'd love to. Yeah, I mean, man, are you kidding me? I mean, I did my own audiobook. I tell people I had the silky smooth voice of a cement truck in high gear careening down a country road. So it's not very. It's certainly not as palatable as Eric's voice. But please give Eric my regards for that very, very kind and undeserving introduction.
And how long did it take you, Lou, to write this book?
Oh my goodness. It took me a while, Gary, and more importantly, it took over almost a year for it to get cleared by the Pentagon. And even then, they still left their redactions in there. And I decided to leave them for the American people to see. So you can actually see the very sections that the government has redacted. Now, I don't put the text in there, but you can see it as the book was written and as it was reviewed by the Pentagon. Because I think, if I'm demanding transparency here from the government, it's important that I be transparent myself. So I wanted the American people to see every step of the way, everything I went through to try to get this book published. And, that's why I put a lot of my heart and soul in. It was hard to write the book because I put a lot of personal information in there. But, when you do that, you make yourself vulnerable and you expose yourself to attacks and criticism. But I can't very well expect the government and demand the government to be transparent if I'm not willing to be transparent myself. And so that's one of the reasons why I wrote the book the way I did.
Did you get frustrated? Because I know you have to submit it for review, and
I'm really lucky. There was a really good individual there. I won't say his name over the air. He worked tirelessly. He worked like a dog fighting for this book to come out, and it probably went beyond what he was supposed to do. And I'm very grateful for him. I was in contact with that person for probably once or twice a week for a year. I can guarantee you, every time my name popped into his inbox, he was just like, "Oh no, Lou again." But evidence that there's still really good people working in the government and trying to do the right thing. And he was really, really good person to work with.
Do you plan to have a sequel to this book?
Oh, wow, Gary, that's the first time anybody's ever asked me that question. Well, that depends now, doesn't it? It depends on where we are in the conversation in the near future. If we're not far enough, then yeah, I plan to talk about a lot more of what I know. If the government is forthcoming, and hopefully by next year this conversation is moot, and people will, I know I've succeeded in my mission when someone mentions the word UFO and they yawn. That's when I know that I've succeeded. That's where I'd like to be. I'd like to be, if I could, by next year or two, working at a Walmart, handing out stickers, and never worrying about this topic again, because it's in the hands of very competent people in the government and outside the government, and in the hands of private citizens. So, good question. I don't know. I can't answer that. Not because I'm trying to be evasive, but because I need to see where we are.
Well, I do think there needs to be a sequel, because I read that book twice, and I'll tell you, it's probably one of the best books on the subject I've ever read. And it makes
Gary,
you really...
That's high praise that I don't deserve, but thank you very much. I appreciate that.
It does make you really think. That's why I had to read it a second time. Is there anything you want to say to the listeners? We got about 2 minutes.
Yeah. We're only here because of you, your listeners. This is it. I mean, people looking, "Oh, you've done so much." No, I haven't. I'm one voice. This has become a movement. This has become a movement of incredible proportions. We are only here today having this conversation. Congress is only having hearings. We only have laws that have been passed on this topic because the American people want to know, and they're not afraid to have the conversation. They said to hell with stigma and taboo, and they've contacted their elected officials and said, "We want to hear this." They've talked to the media and said, "Look, this is an important topic. This is something you need to cover." For the first time, I think we're going to see this topic brought in front of presidential candidates. Think about that for a minute, right? This is where the topic went from being Elvis on the mothership and tinfoil hats to now political leaders are having this conversation and demanding. We've had countries enter into bilateral information and intelligence sharing relationships with the U.S. government for the sole and express purpose of sharing UAP information. Let that sink in for a minute, Gary. Your audience is responsible for that. That is the people's movement. This isn't because of Lou Elizondo or Gary. This is because your audience and people like your audience that say, they stand around the water cooler and say, "Hey, man, what do you think of this topic?" And you know what? I'm not going to let people tell me anymore that it's a silly topic. Now, knowing what I know and the fact that the government wanted to stigmatize this topic on purpose, to hell with that. Let's have the conversation. Let's have it around the dinner table. Let's have it in Sunday school. Let's have it in anywhere that we can have it where people will listen and have the conversation. This is definitely a grassroots initiative, and frankly, in my opinion, always has been. I'm just like you, just one voice among many. But what we have right now is a proverbial army. That I never thought we would have had. If you told me 7 years ago we were going to be here in this conversation, I would have thought you're crazy.
Well,
there's no way.
Before I let you go, I will say your book has lit the fire, which needed to be lit. I will say that.
Gary, I appreciate that, but I respectfully disagree. I think it's people like you who do what you do day in and day out. Can you do me a favor? Can you remind your audience real quick? Just humor me. How long have you been following this topic?
I've been doing it for 55 years.
Now, Gary, I only started working on this topic in 2009, right? You have been doggedly pursuing this topic now for half a century. You think I deserve that credit? You think I'm the one who deserves that credit? No, my friend. It is people like you. You are the ones. I stand on the shoulders of giants. And we are only here today having this conversation, and I mean this sincerely, because of you and people like you. So my hat's off to you. Again, another reason why I suffer imposter syndrome, because when I have a conversation like this with people like you, I definitely am not worthy of any of that praise that you all heap on me. It is really, the credit goes to you and folks like you. So thank you. Thank you sincerely for what you do. Thank you for your wonderful audience for tuning in and allowing me to speak my voice for a little bit, and hopefully not waste too much of your time. But thank you. You are an inspiration, and your audience is an inspiration, each and every one of them. So thank you.
Well, Lou, thank you so much for coming on. I'm going to get that over to you the next day or so, that bio, and you can use it any way you want.
Well, I might actually have some work for that person, if you don't mind, because, man, that voice is incredible.
It is. That's why I use them. Well, Lou, you have a great weekend, and say hi to your family for me, will you?
Sir, you too. Stay blessed, and may your audience have a blessed weekend.
Okay, my friend, you take care.
Yes, sir. Take care.
Okay. We'll be right back with our next guest. You're listening to Night Dreams Talk Radio.
Take a journey of adventure and discovery for the enigmatic giants of the forests. Read On the Trail of Bigfoot by Mike Dupler. The author himself describes it this way. Having found possible Sasquatch evidence, namely trees driven into the ground upside down, thought to be territory markers, led me to investigate this creature in my native Ohio. Several years and many forays into Bigfoot territory, I have found incredible evidence, which inspired my book, On the Trail of Bigfoot. Bigfoot is alive and has many fantastic abilities. The evidence is out there for all to see, but you need to know what to look for. My book will inspire those who have answered the call to seek this elusive creature, the Bigfoot. The truth is out there. Read On the Trail of Bigfoot by Mike Dupler. Available now at Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, and IndieBound.org. Tim R. Swartz is an Indiana native and Emmy Award-winning television producer, videographer, and is the author of a number of popular books, including The Lost Journals of Nikola Tesla and Geff the Talking Mongoose. Tim is a contributing writer for such books as Brad Steiger's Real Monsters, Gruesome Critters, and Beasts from the Dark Side, and Real Ghosts, Restless Spirits, and Haunted Places. Tim's most recent books, along with author Sean Castile, are Weird Time, Exploring the Mysteries of Time and Space, and Mimics, The Others Among Us. As a photojournalist, Tim Swartz has traveled extensively and investigated paranormal phenomena and other unusual mysteries in such diverse locations as the Great Pyramid in Egypt and the Great Wall in China. He's worked with major television networks, both national and international. He's also appeared on the History Channel programs Ancient Aliens, Evidence, Ancient Aliens Declassified, The Unexplained, and the History Channel's Latin America series, Contacto Extraterrestre. His articles have been published in magazines such as Mysteries, Fate, Strange, Atlantis Rising, UFO Universe, Flying Saucer Review, Renaissance, and Unsolved UFO Reports. Tim Swartz is also the co-host of The Paracast with Gene Steinberg, which you can check out at www.theparacast.com. Welcome to Night Dreams Talk Radio with the legendary Gary Anderson. From UFOs to Bigfoot and everything in between, we explore the strange, the mysterious, and the unexplained. Join us for one of the fastest growing shows in the world of the unknown.
And we're back with Tim Swartz. How you doing this evening, Tim?
Hi, Gary. I'm doing fantastic. Thanks for having me on tonight.
Yeah, did you have a chance to listen to Lou? We just got done interviewing him.
Yes, I did. It's fascinating conversation. And I tell you something, you were lucky to get him to come on your show because, I mean, you two talked about just, an hour's worth of just absolutely fascinating things.
I rather enjoyed it. I try to ask him questions that, the other shows didn't ask him. I didn't want to just ask the same questions over and over that he's been asked about thousands of times.
Mm-hmm.
But what do you think is going on? They just found another planet. It was in the news yesterday, only a couple light years away from us.
Yeah, that's the one. I think they found it around Barnard's Star, which they've been looking for a while to see if that star had a planet, and now they've found it. So but the universe is probably full of planets, and I have no doubt full of life. Just all kinds of life, including intelligent life.
Yeah, but I don't think all of them look like the grays that again. Folklore has a lot to do with some of this stuff. I'm going to have people mad at me. But, going back, because I've been doing this so many years, I remember a book going back 25 years ago. And it, with the grays, somebody just kind of drew a picture, and all of a sudden, people are describing grays looking like that. And things advance. And how about the ones that look like insects and all this other stuff? Why would a planet have insects evolve into intelligent beings where they could build, craft and travel the universe and all that? I just don't buy that. I think, no, I don't think they're going to look like us physically, with our same features as us, because the planet they're on, the gravity and all this other stuff could affect with what they would look like. But I think they would be similar to us. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, knowing the way that evolution has worked on planet Earth, I really doubt that life on another planet in another solar system would evolve to look like us. Now, there may be some, say like, universal laws. But I doubt that they would evolve to have one head, two eyes, two arms, two legs, which really is predominant with any time anybody sees or comes into contact with anything coming out of a UFO. Like you said, the grays. As weird as they look, they still have that humanoid structure about them. And again, what are the odds that something like that would evolve on another planet in another solar system, with the exception, and I'll have to say this, Gary, unless we are related to them and that we were seated on the planet sometime, a long, long time ago, long before our memory.
I think we were, because Look at the Maya civilization. Look, they had pyramids. Look in Egypt, pyramids. All over the world, they have found pyramids. In the UK, they have found pyramids. Supposedly, they with imaging now that they have, they even as the Antarctica is thawing out, they're thinking now they might have an image of what could possibly be a pyramid. What created these? They didn't have internet. They didn't have, a phone call or a fax machine to send, hey, here's the blueprints to build a pyramid. Why? All over this world, is there some form of pyramids going back where I don't think that we had the capability to build it?
Well, as I heard somebody say one time, that these ancient civilizations built these fantastic structures, erected these huge monoliths, not because it was hard, but because it was easy for them. Now, that may sound, counterintuitive when we look at it now, because there are a lot of these things that our engineers really can say, yeah, we've got some ideas how they were built, but we're really not sure. So, if you have these ancient races that were able to build these things because they could, you have to wonder where that source of knowledge comes from. Now, I'm not going to go and say that people were dumb in the past and that we needed the help from extraterrestrials. What I will say, though, is that I don't think that our current civilization, is the only smart technology-based civilization that has arisen on this planet. Planet Earth is really old. Life has been here for millions of years. Why should we be the first?
Well, I think it goes, like I said on the show so many times, I think a civilization goes to a certain level, and then it kind of gets wiped off, and then like a computer, your hard drive gets full up, and either you delete it or put another hard drive in. At a certain point, I think the Earth has been rebooted once or twice.
If that.
Or more.
I think 4 or 5 times probably. Well, that's one of the hypotheses of intelligent civilizations throughout the universe, is that there's a speculation that we haven't come into contact with them because they only reach a certain point before they destroy themselves.
Yeah, isn't it kind of interesting? Even countries, if you go back in history and look, they go to a certain level, which is about approximately 100 years, and then they all of a sudden everything that they accomplish kind of starts tracking. And just think about civilizations the same way. I think they go to a certain level and something happens.
Yeah, there's all kinds of different reasons that we seem as a species to want to implode in upon ourselves, whether it be politics or warfare or social, you name it. And you're absolutely correct. I mean, you look at some of the civilizations that are still around today, and we're kind of pushing the limit right now, aren't we?
We are. Look at the UK, look at France, look at all these countries. They go to a certain level, and then they're all of a sudden they're not at that level anymore. And that's interesting. I mean, countries were the main country of the world. The UK, for example, was everywhere. They kind of at one point ruled the whole world. France, the same way. All these countries, Spain, all these, and they got to a certain level, and then they collapsed as a society.
Yeah, and that may not be a bad thing if you think about it, because some of these civilizations get to the point where they really can dominate all over the world. I mean, there's that urge to control the world, to control everyone else. And it seems like that once people start to get to that point where it is possible, then there is an internal collapse. And that just may be nature trying to preserve the species. So I think with us that we'll rise and collapse in the human race, but it's not until some kind of really cataclysmic event by nature, ice age, an asteroid hitting us, something like that, that we really do get that major reset where there's only just a few people left scattered across the world. Then we start over again. And I think that, you were talking about these ancient pyramids and stuff, that possibly those civilizations were helped to build those by a previous civilization, the few remaining survivors that then brought agriculture, mathematics, things like that.
Stargazing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but think about it, though. They didn't have, like I said, they didn't have internet. They didn't have a phone. And why do we have pyramids all around the world, from the Amazon to Mexico to UK to, Middle East, everywhere? And it tells me that whatever happened, the technology was so far advanced that, why I can't see one civilization with, say, where Europe is at, or, where, South America's at. Why would they be able to duplicate each other without some type of communication?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, it's to me, it's beyond a doubt that, at various times in the past, that we had that ability to communicate either through science or, now, some people will be like, oh, now you're talking woo here. But I do believe that, that humans possess other senses that allow us, when we're ready, when we're developed enough, to communicate in other ways with each other and not using technology.
Interesting. Now, getting into ETs, do you feel that ETs are here to help mankind? Because I grew up, because, I'm going on 73. I grew up in all these horrible B movies, like the teenage, aliens to, the one-eye blob. All this stuff here, all negative stuff about, life out there. Could some of that maybe be real?
Well, we have to, and remember that why does it necessarily have to be ETs? We have been caught up in that trope since the 1940s with the whole beginning of the modern UFO era, that we are dealing with ETs. And, and I'm just putting it out there. Do we have proof that whatever intelligence that we are dealing with when it comes to UFOs are extraterrestrials, as we're thinking of extraterrestrials? Explorers and engineers from other planets flying across the light years to reach planet Earth. Could we be dealing with something else, some other kind of intelligence that has been here on the planet with us, maybe from the very beginning? Now, again, it could be ET. Could be that ET discovered this planet, 1 billion years ago and have been here ever since. But I'm just saying that because we have been culturally inoculated to think of UFOs, spaceships, and the like as coming from other planets, that's where our mind tends to go to immediately. However, I think that we should consider other possibilities. Because, like your question asked, UFOs have been seen in our skies as long as I think we've been looking up into the skies. They would have had a chance to dominate us, take us over, colonize us, everything that, these, science fiction movies that we both were raised on. But they haven't, as far as we know.
Not yet.
Yeah, yeah. You think of like Independence Day where they come down and just start blasting. That hasn't happened. And,
you mean it hasn't?
So why?
I thought that was a real documentary.
I think a lot of people do.
I know they must. But how about, the movie? Let's start back, before the 60s. There was two makes of the Invasion of the Body Snatchers. One was in the mid 50s. The other one was like 1969.
Mm-hmm.
Could something like that be going on right now?
Well, I mean, I'm not going to say that it is happening, nor am I going to say that it can't happen. You look at certain kinds of phenomena that's associated with UFOs. And what I'm thinking of in particularly is, say, like the Men in Black, the silencers who supposedly appear to UFO witnesses to warn them that, to not talk about their experiences. Well, a lot of times people report that these guys look human, but don't exactly act human. So could this be a situation? And, my good friend, the late Timothy Green Beckley, he often wondered if whatever intelligence is involved here may not be taking over people, like a form of mind control or hypnosis, in order to do their dirty work. And then when they're done, they're released and wondering what the heck happened to them. They got missing time, when instead, they were dressed up in a dark suit going out threatening little kids who saw a flying saucer. So, yeah, I mean, there is a possibility, considering all the different reports about how people have interacted with the extraterrestrials, that it does make you wonder if there isn't, at times some kind of invasion of the body snatchers going on.
Well, think about it. You mentioned the man in the black. Okay, let's go on to that. A lot of reports of these cars pulling up to somebody's house or somewhere to, go knock on the door to interview them about something, normally probably about a UFO that they've been talking about. All the reports, the cars are old, but look brand new. The guys dressed in the suits are dressed in black, but the suits are like 20 years old in style. The car's like 20 years old in style. The hats they wear are 20 years old in style. Makes you wonder what is going on. Maybe because that's how they think that we are at that time frame. Maybe they're watching all these B movies, right? And they're watching,
exactly.
reruns of, Route 66. I don't know.
Well, Nick Redfern one time stated that if you were going to go to a civilization, and say, for instance, and Redfern was talking that possibly that these guys may be time travelers, whether it be human time travelers or extraterrestrial time travelers, or maybe a little of both. That if you were going to go and then interact with people, probably the type of outfit that you would wear that across a really long period of modern time would work would be a black suit and tie. Because you still see people now wearing black suits and tie, very similar to what they wore back in the 50s and 40s, the zoot suits.
Oh, yeah.
I
wonder if they have the chain to go with it, though. You remember the chain? They used to stand at the corner and flip their chain?
That's right.
Yeah.
But I still, it's kind of a guilty pleasure that, I kind of look at the time traveler hypothesis, considering a lot of the things that happen, like with the Men in Black, like you pointed out, the brand new cars that appear to be extremely vintage but never really driven, and a lot of times the the men in black, or women in black too sometimes, have they don't have a grasp on modern slang. They'll use older versions, like 23 Skidoo.
Yeah,
and
far out,
stuff
man.
like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, far out, man.
Gag
right,
me with a
right.
spoon.
But we've seen that also with people who have come into contact with, say, they've come across, say, like a landed UFO, and there are occupants out walking around, collecting rocks and stuff. And if there is a verbal communication, a lot of times the language tends to be, from the UFO nuts, tends to use older types of slang. So I mean, there is a social and a cultural phenomena going on, I think, as well with the whole UFO phenomenon, and that's why I say that we really need to not think of it as being strictly extraterrestrial, but maybe a combination of a number of different things.
Well, there's still talk about maybe life, in the inner Earth, or deep in the crevasses of the oceans where we haven't been able to go yet, or even map. I was listening to the retired admiral. I can't think of his name right now, but we only have a very small percentage of our oceans mapped. Very small.
This is one of the things that I've been happy to see really come out with the whole new acknowledgement of the UFO phenomena that has started since around 2004, is the acknowledgement of USOs. Underwater submersible objects, or I don't remember exactly what it stands for, but UFOs underwater.
Fast moving objects.
Yes. And this has been something that, I had a book by Ivan T. Sanderson that was written in the 60s. That, the entire book was about mysterious underwater cases similar to UFOs. But it's been kind of like the UFO stepchild, UAP stepchild USOs, and so now I think that we're kind of in our heydays here with the understanding of the whole phenomena, when you're starting to bring in all of these other diverse factors with UFOs and USOs and other phenomena that may not seem to be related, but seem to have a tie-in with it.
I think so. And here's another thing, too. Not just our planet, but, a lot of people think that there's life on the moon and that we're being deceived by it. We're being lied to about that because some people claim that the moon has an atmosphere. And on the backside, there's our bases along with, alien bases. What's your feeling on that?
Well, I doubt if the moon has an atmosphere. That's something that even, amateur astronomers with a relatively small telescope would be able to see, on a good clear night when the moon is full. Now, however, there has been people who have come forward who worked for NASA or some of these other side functions that dealt with the photographs of the I think it's like the Ranger project, which was satellites and then a couple of landers that came before the Apollo programs to try to find good places that the astronauts could land. And I know a couple of people said that they had to handle these photographs and actually airbrush out what appeared to be domes and other kinds of structures at various locations on the moon. So if you were an extraterrestrial race or even a spacefaring race from close by, that you wanted to keep tabs on planet Earth, the moon is an excellent location to do so, especially on the far side, which, it never faces the Earth. You can come and go with impunity, and until we actually, get satellites and spacecraft of our own to be able to see what's going on, no one would ever know the better.
And why haven't we?
You know, that is something that I ask all the time because, you know, I was a child of the early space age, the Gemini, the Apollo, all the moon landings. And we actually had at least 2 more moon landings scheduled to go, but Nixon canceled them, saying that, well, we've already been there now. Nobody cares anymore. The money can be best used someplace else. Okay, that's fine. But then that was it. Nobody ever went back again, human-wise. You know, we've sent satellites to orbit the moon and take photographs, you know. But nobody has gone back to land. And it's curious. Now, of course, some of the conspiracy theories go that we were warned off the moon. You know, that somebody told us that we weren't allowed to go back. I don't know. You know, I mean, it's a good story, but I need proof. I need vetting on stories like that. You know, I want to see the communications, you know, that allegedly went down for that. Yeah, so I don't know.
Here's another thing. Our country and the world leaders of other countries, the space station is going to be retired shortly, and we don't have anything to replace it. So, you know, again, you know, we talk about we're going to go to Mars. We're going to go talk about, you know, creating a base on the moon, but it never happens. They keep pushing it off and pushing it off and pushing it off. Something is up. I mean, I would think the space station, if it was accomplishing what they've been trying to do for research all these years, why are we not getting another one to replace it or do something? Once we lose the space station, I think the drive to go out in space is going to start dying.
Well, to go into space is expensive. You know, I mean, there's
so are
no
wars.
denying that.
Think about that.
Yeah, oh yeah. That's right. That's right. But if you also think about the jobs that are created to establish and to build a spacefaring technology, you know, I mean, I think that people a lot of times just they can't see any further than their nose. That they see, well, to build another space station is going to be billions of dollars, and we can't afford that. But if you look at how earlier attempts to reach space, to go to the moon and things like that, really enriched our technology and our science, it's a crime, like you said, that we are not looking to build a new space station, build those bases on the moon, go to Mars, go further than Mars. You know, this is something that I think is imperative for us. You know, we can only dirty our nest for so long before we're going to have to leave. And we better have the technology to do so. And I don't think that chemical rockets are going to be able to accomplish what we really need to happen, which is why we need to continue our space program, not just shooting rockets into space, but to work on developing new technology, maybe something similar to what we're seeing flying around our skies in the form of UAPs. You know, maybe that is what is happening to try to give us that nudge, that look what we can do, you can too.
Well, maybe we are already doing that with back engineered craft, but think about this. China, they invented the rocket. When did they invent the rocket? How far back was it? But yet, think about this. When we have to send a satellite up, to put satellites up, what do we use? We use the same fundamentals as the Chinese discovered back in the 1600s.
Mm-hmm.
That's scary.
Yeah. Well, and that is the way, though, that technology works, because you see this all the time, that things that were discovered a couple of hundred years ago are then developed years and years later when a use is found for them. There used to be a great show on PBS called Connections that would examine just that type of scenario using, like the rockets in China, and how from the fireworks and being used in battle was then developed over the centuries to get us to the moon. So, I mean, what kind of stuff has been invented, thought about at the beginning of the 20th century that maybe later in the 21st century, people will be like, oh my gosh, this is what is going to get us to the stars.
Yeah, if we're still here. Again, I was reading a report about the sea level with Antarctica. It is now, they figured, we had another 100 years. Now they're talking about 30 years. And then we're going to have we're going to go into an ice age, because that is thawing out. That water is dumping into the ocean, which is now that they figure going to stop the flow from the equator, that belt that keeps, Europe from freezing. And I think we're really going on borrowed time here. And, if you go back 20 years, 25 years, 30 years ago, I remember when scientists would come out and say, this is going to happen. And then a group of other scientists, that's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. You don't know what you're talking about. And yet it's happening right now, right in front of our eyes. But we're not really trying to do anything to stop it. We're in a national disaster worldwide of what is happening with, the amount of species that are dying off, going extinct. That is alarming. One of these days, it'll be the humanity is going to be extinct.
Unfortunately, humans as a species tends not to react to something until it's basically too late.
Yeah.
And we've seen it time and time again throughout history. And, you see like individual responses to this. Say for instance, you have a hurricane that's advancing on your city, and, you have people who are, like, well, I've lived here for 30 years and no hurricane is going to make me move. And then that's the last you ever hear of them. And I think that our species in general tends to be like this. We often put up the hypothesis, what would humanity do if there was a giant earth-cracking asteroid heading towards us? And most scientists' response are, we wouldn't do anything. We would just keep arguing among ourselves until it was too late.
Go
ahead.
I would go underneath my bed.
Yeah.
Can't be any worse than what they taught us in grade school. Remember, if there was a nuclear war and there was an attack, go underneath your school desk.
Right. Oh, I remember that. They showed us those films too.
Yeah, like that's going to protect us, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Right. But I don't know. I mean, I always hope that there will always be visionaries who will come forth and help kickstart us every now and then to making those kinds of advancements. Nikola Tesla, I think, is a good example. I mean, if it wasn't for Tesla, we wouldn't be talking on Night Dreams Talk Radio right now. The technology would be, still 30 or 40 years in the past. So we need to support these kinds of people to show us the way, to say, look, this is what we have to do. This is how we're going to do it.
Well, I hope we have the time left to be able to do that. That's the whole issue. And do you think ETs would actually, your own gut feeling, your own feeling on this, do you think they would stop humanity from killing themselves off?
I don't know. I haven't seen a lot of evidence that they have done so in the past. Now, naturally, I mean, we haven't come to the point yet where we've let those atomic missiles fly. But with other things, just the various wars and pandemics that we've had, and I think this was something that Louis Elizondo talked about as well. There doesn't appear to have been anybody stepping in to say, "No, you stop that human race." So it could be like Star Trek, with the Prime Directive, where they could watch but they can't interfere. And if we're going to go and blow ourselves up or be destroyed somehow, they're just going to be like, well, that's too bad.
Well, maybe
we'll
they're
on to the next planet.
Well, maybe they're selling tickets, as a bet. Well, are you going to take it? Are they going to destroy themselves in 2025 or 26 or 2030? I don't know. Maybe they're doing that. I want to bet on that one myself, yes. Actually.
Yeah, well, and seeing how we have handled things in the past, then I wouldn't bet on humanity.
Another question I have: do you think people are being abducted and experimented on?
I think people have had some kind of experience like that. There's just been too many reports, too many people who have had these experiences without realizing that other people have had them as well. And then when they find out that this has been occurring, then they'll come forward and say, well, 50 years ago, this happened to me. So, I do think the abduction phenomena is real, but again, we don't know what is behind it. Once again, we kind of fall back to that safe place: abductions, UFOs, extraterrestrials. But we really don't know. Some people have come forward and said that, well, the creatures told me that they were from Alpha Centauri, or wherever. Okay, that's interesting, but how are they going to prove that? Have they offered any proof that they're from Alpha Centauri or Zeta Reticuli or places like that? Until one of these crafts actually lands and the things come out and say, look, here's where we're from, here's the evidence, then, I'm going to say that people are having real experiences, but what the source of those experiences are is still up for grabs.
Well, if a UFO landed right now in a populated area, what's going to happen. The military is going to come out there. They're going to bring out their weapons. They're going to do anything. And could you imagine now the craft's door opens up and an alien walks out, right? Like that one movie with a device that he wants to give to the president, and bang, he gets shot.
Right.
I mean, just think about that. Again, if I was an ET, I wouldn't want to come to land on this planet in a populated area to sit there and say hi, take me to your leader. If that happened, they would probably take him to a lab and experiment on him.
Well, and also, you land to say, take me to your leader, which leader? What country? United Nations? I mean, there are people here in the United States who are arguing back and forth on, who the true leaders are. So, it's very problematic and tribal. And I'm with you. If I was an extraterrestrial or a time traveler or what have you, I would approach planet Earth with kid gloves and just, observe. But that would be it. I wouldn't associate with them. It's just like is bad karma associating with the people from Earth.
Well, JC, I got a question for you. Okay, if a UFO landed in your shopping Walmart parking lot in Dover, Ohio, What do you think would happen?
It would be all over the internet. People would be going, half of them would be going berserk and running and be scared, and the others be sitting there trying to take videos and pictures, and that's what would be happening. Cars would be wrecking.
Oh, you don't think the military would be there? You don't think these people with their rifles, with their hunting rifles, aren't going to be there to take a shot at it?
I mean, everybody here in Ohio's got a gun, so yeah, there's going to be some shots fired.
So, in other words, do you think if there was an ET that stepped out of the craft to say hi to humanity, I don't think he would get off his platform.
Well, honestly, depending where he lands, you land on some of these good old boys' property, they're going to probably take you as a trespasser. You're liable to get shot.
Oh, right. JC, you got to look at this realistic here as if a craft landed down. I know how people react. Think about in California. Of course, that's before your time. Watts. What happened with Watts? Could you imagine if a craft landed in a populated area? Number one, you're going to have only the crazies show up. Everybody else is going to be panicking, and you're going to have the military there as a national threat. And so, I mean, we could be stepping into a galactic war.
Oh yeah, the military would be there as soon as believe it. They'll be there. The military would know about it with DARPA and everything. They'd know what was going on real quick.
Yeah. Well, Tim, what do you think about that? My scenario.
Oh yeah, you're absolutely correct. I mean, if something were to land unannounced, unless they would have some kind of way to prevent people shooting at them, planes dropping bombs, stuff like that, then that's absolutely what would happen. It makes me think, though, that if this was an intelligent species that has been observing us for a long time, there would probably be some kind of prior announcement, and then a chosen location where there wouldn't be a lot of people to show up with their shotguns wanting to go skeet shooting on alien heads.
Yeah, but again, too, if they announced it, you remember the old Twilight Zones show where the ETs came down and they gave a book to serve man. And everybody, the scientists, this is going to get rid of all these diseases. It's going to help mankind. And, and meanwhile, they were saying, well, hey, come and visit our planet. So instead of people going on aircraft, they were getting free rides to this planet. And then at the end of the show, one of the other scientists runs up as this one scientist was selected to be able to go, right? She's yelling at him, don't get on the craft. We've deciphered what the book is. To serve man is a cookbook.
I love that episode.
Well, it could make perfectly sense.
I think that people would probably give any extraterrestrials just really a tremendous heartburn afterwards.
You mean gas?
But and going back to what we had talked about at the beginning of this interview,
this is not an interview. This is a conversation with two friends.
Okay, all right. Would extraterrestrials even find us palatable? Would we even be able to be digested?
I don't know. Humans still eat humans in certain parts of this world.
Yeah, long pigs is the term.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm just really worried if we're ever going to be told the truth. Lou, has what he can talk about. But, when you ask him certain questions, naturally, he has a document he signed. He can't disclose it. I mean, we don't know if they're here to help us. And again, people think it's like, oh, it's only one race of ETs, when literally there's billions of galaxies out there. We don't know where it stops. I don't know where the brick wall is. And who knows? We're being visited maybe by multiple ones on a regular basis. They're discovering our planet because look, we're making a nice show out there in the solar system that we exist. Not a very good one, but maybe one day we might get a surprise and it might not be one of these bubbly ones.
Well, I think that there's a possibility that you're correct, that but there could be like a number of different scenarios going on at the same time, that there could be extraterrestrials visiting us. There could be interdimensional beings visiting us, time travelers, all kinds of
wait a minute.
things.
But okay, Tim, are these the time travelers? It's like from 100 years in the or 400 years in the future, and they say, "Hey, look at this picture. This is what and it's a Polaroid picture." God, I wish I would have bought stock in Polaroid back years ago.
Well, I've said it before and I've said it again. So what is Polaroid the height of our technology, that they're still going to be using it in the year 3650?
Probably
to take pictures of Los Angeles underwater and the surface of Mars. It's like, oh, let's get the Polaroid swinger out and get that picture.
I don't know. I've been asking for 55 years for a time traveler to come on one of my shows. Never one has stepped forward.
Oh, I know. Well, I mean, that was Stephen Hawking. He offered to throw a party at a certain date. And if the time travelers, showed up, then they'd have this big party. And apparently nobody ever showed up. So, I don't know.
Well, we got to wrap up the show here in a minute. What do you feel? Your gut feeling about disclosure, ETs, what's going on? What's your own gut honest feel?
Well, my own gut honest feeling is that I think that, first of all, that disclosure has been happening, little bits at a time throughout, probably starting maybe, in the early 1980s. However, I don't necessarily believe that our government or the other governments really know what's going on either. They know that there's something happening. They know that there are some kind of craft that are flying around that seem to exhibit a technology that is way beyond ours. But other than that, and they may have some pictures and maybe even some little bits of metal that they've collected, but that's about it. Everything else is just like, we don't know, but we're not going to let anybody else know that we don't know, because that's even more frightening than admitting that, yeah, they're extraterrestrials from Zeta Reticuli. If you were to come forward and say, here's these craft flying around in our sky, they can go wherever they want, we can't stop them, we don't know where they're coming from. Now that's scary.
It is, isn't it? When you really think about it, and then I go as to the point is, maybe we've been invaded and we just don't realize it yet.
If we have been invaded, it happened centuries ago. That's my take on it. That this isn't something that's just happened recently, that we were invaded maybe millions of years ago. And that, they're not extraterrestrials because they're living here with us now. Maybe their original source was someplace else, but they're here now and have been with us for a long time.
Well, Tim, think maybe we are the Martians.
That's right. That's right.
How can they find your website and your books?
Well, we've got a new book out called Weird Time, Exploring the Mysteries of Time and Space. And the website for it is weirdtimebook.com. And you can find more information about it on that website. And it's easily available on Amazon.com and maybe, hopefully, some of your favorite local bookstores.
Well, hey, thank you so much for coming on with short notice, too.
Hey, it's my pleasure. I always have a great time having a conversation with you, Gary.
Oh, you don't find me strange like my wife does?
Probably no more strange than my wife finds me. So.
Okay, Tim, you have a great weekend, will you?
Thanks, Gary. You as well.
Okay, till next time, my friend.
All right, good night.
Well, when you think about this stuff, JC, what do you think? What's your gut feeling about disclosure? Think about it for a second before you answer it.
Well, disclosure is never going to come out one day and there's going to be a president at the podium. Well, here is disclosure. It's never going to happen. First of all, there'd be a lot of people thrown under the bus. There'd be a lot of people responsible for money allocated for such and such that should have been for this and that, and it's never going to happen. I think it's, like you say, Roswell and all these little bits and pieces leading up to what it is today.
And how many years did that take? 1940? Yep. And no, not even Roswell. Let's go back to 1952. Over the flyby over the Capitol.
Yeah, that was another one, very much so, and I think it's a long process. They know that. Listen, the powers that be, whether it be the government or the black government or whatever you want to call, they have a team of psychiatrists and people that know psychology. That's what they know this. Plus, there's a lot of different variables that go into this. It's not so easy in black and white. Well, here it is. We're going to let everybody know about it. There's just so much else that goes into that. It just will never happen.
I don't think so. Now, next week, who do we have on?
Well, I'm going to tell you something. Next week, coming Wednesday, we have Ron Lanham and his partner Joe Perdue coming on. They are Bigfoot researchers. I'm going to tell you, they've come across some strange paranormal stuff in the woods. They've also, they researched and investigated a so-called some kind of being on video too, but all kind of wild stuff.
Yeah, the hairy man.
Yeah, there's a hairy man or two. And then we don't have a show on Thursday, but we do have a show on Friday. Next Friday, we got Frank Kimmler coming on talking about Roswell and other things. He actually thinks he found a piece of the craft, Gary, in Roswell area there at the crash site. And then followed up by Mr. Barry Livingston. You know about Mr. Barry.
Oh, yeah. My Three Sons and a lot of different movies and all that. He's going to be back, and we're going to try to get him to talk about the paranormal. Well, everybody, I want to thank you for tuning into the show. A big shout out to all the truckers. We just, by the way, hit over 162,000 subscribers on YouTube, and it's growing. That's worldwide. Our audience is not just here in this country. It's Canada. We have a big listenership in Canada, Nova Scotia, Europe, South Africa, the Philippines, Vietnam, Thailand, India, Iceland. It shocked me how many people are listening to the show, and the audience age group has changed. It used to be people 55 to 70 was the average. Now, JC, it is about 25 to 35 is the bulk of the people because they want to know what's going on.
They want to know, and you know what? We've got some of the perfect guests to answer some of their questions.
And we got Whitley and Ed Dames coming on too towards the end of the month.
That is a daily quinella you can't pass up right there. It's Whitley Strieber and Major Ed Dames on one show.
Yeah. So again, tell your friends about us. Make sure you give us a thumbs up, and if you even after the show is off. And for the people who are watching, after it's been put up, because that's where most of our audience comes from, a day or two after the show, because the time difference worldwide, go on to the comment section and say something good about us or whatever, and let people, know about our show. Again, I want to thank a big thank you to Lou Elizondo. And again, I want to say thank you to Lou for serving our country in multiple campaigns. Till next week, everybody have a good one and stay out of trouble. I'm going to be watching a lot of sci-fi this weekend. Everybody have a good one. We will catch you on the other side. Everybody take care.
Talking to you at night, Gary on the radio, but maybe he's not inside. Bigfoot's on his tail, flying UFOs, that's right.